All right, Patreon. Today we're going to be making this animation right here. It is done with geometry nodes, and I previewed it on a tutorial that I posted. It's posting on the 19th. Today's the 18th, so depending on when I upload this. But I'm sure a few people are going to ask, so I figured I'd teach it here on Patreon. How do you make it? So let's go ahead and just add one piece of geometry into the scene, and we'll hop into the geometry nodes workspace to build this out. So I'm gonna click new and kill that group input. And then we're just gonna go ahead and we're gonna get a grid, plug that there. And then right here on the size, just click and drag, type in 10. So that scales it by 5, if that makes any sense. Then we can click and drag here and just add geometry. This is not an exact science. You just want enough to be able to displace. Now let's get a set position node. So first, let's go ahead and get a combine XYZ right here. Plug the vector into the offset. Then we need to get a map range. This will replace the color ramp that we would normally use in this situation, but the map range is a little bit better here in geometry nodes for this example. We're gonna plug it into the Z, so that allows us to play with just the Z. And now my cats are making noise. Now let's go ahead and get a noise texture. So noise texture, plug the factor into the value. So now we have a displaced plane and displaced in geometry nodes, which is really cool. We'll go to maybe 0.6, maybe even smaller. We want a pretty big wave. And then play with this min to max. So if you bring this down, that might be good enough. We're gonna go here to 4D. Yeah. So notice, bring that back to 0. When you bring this minimum down, it's going to displace it farther, like almost like a strength bar, but it is bringing it down. Like physically, it is bringing it farther down to the ground. Now you could offset it by using the max, but then, you do have some control there. But what I like to do is to get a transform node so that we can keep this anchor point in the center. And so just bring that up like that. Now our anchor point is in the center. And then we do need a smooth node. Set shade smooth node so that everything's nice and smooth. And here we go, we have our noise texture. Let's go ahead and animate this first because we're gonna be duplicating this node tree, and getting this animation out of the way first is gonna be in our best interest. So put your W at 0, right over here. Go ahead and make a new timeline. And 250 frames seems appropriate. I think that might work. So let's go ahead and hit Shift D, get another noise texture. Let's get a mix RGB. And right now we are just going to loop the noise texture. That's the process we're about to start. So make sure in your preferences on the animation tab here, your default interpolation is linear. Super important if you want this to be a seamless loop. So here's the fun little complicated process of looping a noise texture. Hover up here and go back to frame 0. And this W will dictate the speed of the animation. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit I, go to the very end and type in maybe 5. This is really a guessing game at this point. And then right over here with your cursor at the very end, hit I at 0, make sure the W is at 0, go to the end, go back to frame 0 and type in -5 instead of +5. And the last thing we need to do is hover over here on this mix, make sure your factor is at 0, hit I, go to the end, slide it over, hit I again. So now if we press play, we have a looping animation. Now it's really slow. So the way you can fix that is go back to frame 0. And then right here, let's go to 15, -1.5. And then we'll go to the end where this says 5 and we'll do +15. That should, yeah. That's a little bit, and let's just make sure we didn't make any mistakes. Good, it loops. All right. We have now animated our plane. Now let's go ahead to the shading part, which is really going to be the thing that makes this work. So first, I do want to be in the Eevee render engine, and very important is to turn on your bloom. So let's get a new material, and then we need to go back to geometry nodes and get a set material node. And click that material, that new material right there. And then we go back to shading. So now it's actually working. I'm gonna go ahead and delete that node, get a mix shader, just like this, get an emission, and a transparent. Transparent BSDF, and plug them both into your mix shader. And then right over here on your blend mode, go to alpha blend, and that's going to allow that transparency to work. And you can play with your factor to make sure it's working. Now let's go ahead and get a color ramp. Plug that into the factor. Get in a wave texture. Hit Control T with that Node Wrangler add-on enabled. Comes with Blender by default. Use that object coordinate and plug that color into the color ramp. And then I'm going to go here and crunch this in till this line gets smaller. We want it to be as thin as possible. So that looks really good. That's about what we're looking for. Now let's go ahead and spread this out with one more node. So bring the vector line right here and get a white noise node. WH, white noise, and then a mix RGB, and plug the object into color 2. And then now we have this. So if we just hold down shift, so it's just really, really small. Now we have these nice, really grainy looking waves, which for me is what I'm looking for. Then you can bring that brightness up. So now we have this. Looks really grainy. It looks really ugly, but that is the style that I'm going for. This very grainy look. When I press play, it looks worse, but that's just the Eevee preview. Now let's go ahead and control this color. So let's go to the official render view in the world, bring it down to black. And then let's just go ahead and play with this emission color. So we need to get a color ramp. And we need to get a gradient node. And then we'll get another mapping and texture coordinate set up with the object coordinate. Plug that there, plug this into the color. And then all we need to do here is just go ahead and pick whatever color you like. So we're going to go with this one. We're going to go to spherical. And then we're going to go to B-spline. There we go. We can bring that brightness up and then bring this in. So notice how that changes very drastically, but now we get this really nice gradient. And then you can just go into the mapping node, click and drag, and just scale that up. So click and drag, scale it up till you stop seeing the edges. And there you go. And then what I would do is I'd bring this back a little bit and bring this in to get more of a highlight right here. Notice that highlight? That's what's going to give us glow. So if I just go to the front here, I'm going to hit the tilde key, go to the front, Control A, get a camera, Control Alt 0, snap that to view. And that didn't really work out so well, but we're going to make it work. So now we have this. If we press play, we have this animating. Now notice we have that highlight. So what I'm going to do is go to the camera view, go to bloom, and go to say 0.7 and maybe 1. So now when this animates, we have this really bright highlight, which we can go ahead and play with that color ramp to make it a little bit better. Now we have this nice highlight. What I want to do is go ahead and rotate these lines. Notice how they're going this way. And excuse my air conditioner, it just turned on. All right, so now we have this really nice looking wave texture. Now we're going to go ahead and hit Shift D, duplicate it. I'm going to rotate it by 90 degrees, and I'm also going to flip it by 180 degrees. So when I press play, you now get these two really cool wires. There is an issue, and that is now they're crisscross. Notice this crisscross pattern. I want them to go to the same way. So here's how we do that. We pick one of the wires, which is the one where the texture is now going this way. So if we look under it, you can see which way that texture is going. It's going the wrong way. So what I would do is go over here and click on this number right here. That makes a duplicate material. Now it says material 002. Go to your geometry nodes. So notice where it says material 001. We do want to go ahead and select 002, but first, let's go ahead and click that duplicate. Now we get a duplicate geometry nodes tree. And then we'll go ahead and select material 2. We can go to shading. And we can go ahead where it says 90, just go to 0. Now they're both going the same direction. If I go to my camera view they now animate together in this really nice way. And the glare is a bit too bright. We'll do 0.7. But now, you see, you have this beautiful animation with these different overlapping layers, which really just makes something really pretty and really satisfying to look at. And that is it. That's the tutorial. So, let me show you how to export this and we'll be done. Because it's Eevee, let's just go ahead and do FFmpeg video. Encoding, go to MP4. Output quality, perceptually lossless, and then go ahead and pick wherever you want to save it. Render animation, and you'll be done. So thank you guys. Thank you guys for supporting here on Patreon. I really do appreciate it. And look out for the next tutorial for this month. And I'll see you in the next tutorial.